In this first story, the house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in rural Ohio, the kind of place realtors describe as peaceful because nothing ever seems to happen there. And that's exactly why Mark and Elise bought it after their first child was born, ignoring the local rumors about the previous owner who had been found dead at the bottom of the basement stairs, with no sign of a fall, no broken bones, and a look of absolute terror frozen into his face. For the first few weeks, everything felt normal, almost too normal, until Mark started noticing the house reacting to them, not in loud or dramatic ways, but subtly, like the way doors always seemed to close themselves after Elise left a room, or how the baby monitor would turn on by itself at exactly 2:17 a.m. every night, filling the bedroom with a low hiss of static even when their son was sleeping soundly beside them. And Mark tried to rationalize it all until Elise began waking up with bruises on her wrists, shaped like fingers, bruises she couldn't explain, and swore weren't there when she went to bed. Things escalated the night the power went out during a storm, plunging the house into complete darkness, and Mark heard footsteps moving slowly across the ceiling, even though the attic was empty, the steps pacing back and forth directly above the nursery, deliberate and heavy, like someone deciding something. And when he ran upstairs with a flashlight, the footsteps stopped instantly, replaced by a smell so thick and sour it made his eyes water, like old metal and damp earth. The next morning, Elise insisted they leave, her voice flat and distant. But before they could pack, Mark found the basement door open, something they never used, and at the bottom of the stairs, he saw deep gouge marks in the concrete walls, long and uneven, as if someone had tried to climb their way out with bare hands. And when he turned around, Elise was standing at the top of the stairs, staring down at him with an expression he didn't recognize. Her face calm, almost relieved, as she told him in a quiet voice that the house didn't want them to leave, that it needed one of them to stay. And by the time police arrived later that day, after a neighbor reported screaming, Mark was dead at the bottom of the basement stairs. No defensive wounds, no signs of a struggle, and Elise was found upstairs rocking their baby in complete silence, unable to explain what happened, while the house itself showed no evidence of violence at all. Just clean walls, closed doors, and the faint impression of handprints pressed into the concrete, slowly fading as if whatever had been trapped there had finally been let go. In the second story, the house wasn't abandoned or old or hidden away from the world. It was a freshly renovated duplex in downtown Phoenix, bright walls, new floors, and a price that felt almost suspiciously affordable, which is exactly why Trevor moved in without asking questions, convinced the previous tenant's sudden death was just another landlord exaggeration, until he realized the house didn't feel empty at night. It felt watched, like something was patiently tracking his movements from room to room, never rushing, never revealing itself, just staying close enough to be felt. The first sign something was wrong came through sound, a soft tapping that followed a pattern, 3 slow knocks from inside the walls whenever the apartment went quiet, always stopping the moment Trevor turned his head, always starting again once he tried to sleep. And he told himself it was pipes or settling wood or stress, until one night he knocked back on the wall out of pure frustration and felt the response immediately. Not an echo, not vibration, but 3 deliberate knocks answering from the other side, perfectly timed, as if someone had been waiting for him to notice. After that, the apartment began to change, not visibly, but emotionally. The air growing heavier, the silence stretching too long, his phone losing signal only inside the unit, alarms failing, clocks stopping at random hours. And Trevor started finding marks on his body in the mornings, thin red lines across his ribs, shallow and precise, like something had measured him while he slept. Things finally broke the night he woke up, unable to move, staring at the ceiling as the familiar knocking began again, this time from inside the room, slow and confident, until the sound shifted into footsteps circling the bed, close enough that he could feel the mattress dip slightly. And when he finally forced himself to speak, asking who was there, the footsteps stopped, and a voice answered from the wall beside him, calm and intimate, using his name, telling him the apartment wasn't haunted, it was occupied, and it didn't appreciate being ignored. The next morning, neighbors reported hearing screams that cut off abruptly. Police found Trevor alone in the unit, alive but unresponsive, his eyes fixed on the wall near the bed where faint impressions pressed outward from the inside, like hands trying to get through. And though the apartment was sealed and structurally sound, no one could explain why the walls were warm to the touch, or why, weeks later, new tenants complained about a soft tapping sound that always came in threes, especially when the apartment went quiet, especially when someone new moved in. In the third story, the job wasn't dangerous, just isolated, which is why Ethan took it without hesitation, a nighttime security position at a closed medical records warehouse on the outskirts of Chicago. A windowless concrete building filled with decades of forgotten files, humming fluorescent lights, and cameras that rarely caught anything more than dust drifting through empty hallways. The first nights were uneventful, almost boring, until Ethan noticed the logs didn't match his shifts. Timestamps showing doors opening and closing in sections of the building he never entered. Movements recorded during hours he knew he was sitting alone at the desk. And when he brought it up to his supervisor, he was told the system was old and unreliable, something everyone learned to ignore. The feeling of being alone didn't last long after that, because somewhere between midnight and 1 a.m., Ethan began hearing footsteps echoing faintly through the aisles of shelving, slow and measured, always stopping when he stood up to investigate, always resuming once he returned to his chair. And he tried to convince himself it was air pressure or pipes, until one night, a security camera feed flickered to life showing a man standing at the end of an aisle, facing directly toward the camera, completely still, his face blurred by static, as if the system refused to focus on him, shaken. Ethan rewound the footage, only to find the man had never been there. Yet the next morning, the log showed a recorded entry under Ethan's name, authorizing access to restricted files he had never touched. Things escalated when the intercom crackled on by itself, broadcasting a low breathing sound that seemed to follow him as he moved, growing louder near the archive room marked with a red tag, a room his supervisor had explicitly told him never to enter. And when Ethan finally opened the door, driven more by dread than curiosity, he found rows of files labeled with names, dates, and causes of death, all normal except one file at the end, freshly printed, bearing his name, the current date, and a blank line where the cause should be. The next shift, Ethan never made it home, and the official report claimed he resigned without notice. But weeks later, a new security guard swore that sometimes, late at night, the cameras briefly show someone sitting at the front desk, watching the monitors in silence, logged in under a name the system refuses to erase.